so let's begin our study of the book of Joshua. Let's look at our title page first. The Hebrew name for Joshua is Yehoshua. It means Yahweh, and the word that's used there is that tetragrammaton that we talked about, the personal name of God. It means Yahweh is salvation. So Yeshua, or what we in English call Jesus, is the shortened version of Yehoshua. It is the same root name. The Septuagint, which is the Greek version of Hebrew scriptures, very important. It was written several hundred years before Jesus was born, and it was what many people in the Greek culture, many Jews in the Greek culture read, the Septuagint. It actually has the exact same name for Jesus and Joshua. They're called the same name, Yehoshua, in the Septuagint. It has 24 chapters in it. Now, this is going to be the first of 12 books that is designated as history books. So we've stepped out of Torah, and we are now into the history books. We'll have 12 of those. The author, primarily Joshua. There are some final parts of the chapter that are written by an alternate author because Joshua's going to die. The amount of time that passes is about 25 to 27 years from the beginning of the book until the end of the book. And it was approximately 1406 BC to 1380 BC, just to give you a little bit of a timeline. This is at the end of Moses, the beginning of Joshua, the claiming of the land. All right, let's turn the page. The first page that you should have there you have a little page like this, and it just shows you the breakdown of the history books. So we'll be going through the book of Esther. Those are the 12 history books. We'll be going through each one of those. The one down below is just a little small one. It tells you what each section is. So there's the historical writings that we're in now. Then we'll go to poetic and the major prophets and the minor prophets. And it just tells you the titles of who those are. All right, who is Joshua? Well, we first meet Joshua in the book of Exodus. He is the leader of the army of the Israelites. During one of their first battles, which was a battle with the Amalekites, Moses holds up his hands to the Lord. You may remember this story. We spent some time with it. Now, if he lowers his hands, the Israelites begin to lose the battle. But if his hands stay up, the Israelites are victorious in battle. After a while, Moses is so exhausted that Aaron and Hur hold up the hands of Moses while he is too exhausted to do it for himself. It's always that reminder, boy, we need an Aaron and a Hur in our life. So when there are times in our life when we are just too tired, we are just too exhausted, we just can't put one foot in front of the other, someone will come along beside us and say, I can hold you up. This is the perfect example of that. We need an Aaron and a Hur, and we need to be an Aaron and a Hur. So look around, and if you're not one of those, see if there isn't someone you can connect with. So Joshua is there leading the battle against the Amalekites, and Exodus 17 tells us Joshua fought the Amalekites as Moses had ordered, and then the result, Joshua overcame the Amalekite army with the sword. God is going to tell Moses, the Lord said to Moses, write this on a scroll as something to be remembered, and make sure that Joshua hears it, because I will completely blot out the name of Amalek from under heaven. So this is back in Exodus. This is one of the early battles, and God is already telling Moses, you make sure that Aaron understands that this is me and this is what I'm doing. Why would he do that? Aaron's already in training, right? Joshua is already in training. God is wanting to make sure that Joshua, from the very beginning, understands that the Lord is the one who is fighting the battles for this. And it's a good lesson for Joshua, and he learns it well. Okay, we're going to see a little bit more of that. God clearly wanted Joshua to see and hear and remember what he had done for the people in the battle. Joshua was in training. For the rest of his life, Joshua was known as a great military general. He will defeat 6 nations and 31 kings in his military career. But Joshua never forgets that his strength and victory always belongs to the Lord. Joshua is simply the man chosen to carry out God's plans and purposes. So I want to stop there for just a minute. Really important for us to remember that, because I see that as such a lack in the organized church today, the universal organized church. And that is, no one is indispensable. When God chooses to use you for a ministry purpose, it is his gift to you. It is a blessing that he is allowing you to be the person that he works through in order to accomplish something. No matter what your ministry is. So when you get to do something, if you get to be in music, if you get to be a deaconess, if you get to serve meals, if you get to be a teacher, if you get to do, no matter what it is that God has you do, no matter where he has you in the ministry, that is his gift to you. That is not your gift to him. You do it because you have love in your heart and you want to serve the Lord. But he is allowing his plans and purposes to be worked through us. And so we need to remember that, because what happens a lot of times is that people have a job. Maybe you're the best music person in the church, and you stand in the front and you sing beautifully. You get lots of accolades from people who come to you and tell you, oh, I was just carried away by the music today. It was so amazing. People have a tendency to sometimes get very prideful in themselves and the gift that they have, and forget that God is simply working through them to touch the hearts. The Holy Spirit is touching the hearts of the people through the ministry of music. And we see that oftentimes, sadly, we see that with leaders who have been in ministry for a very long time. You look at the ones on TV and all the ones, they tend to get very puffed up in themselves because they forget that important lesson. So Joshua, learning that God was always the one who orchestrated the victory. Yes, he was well known as a military general, but it is not his skill that won the victory for Israel. It was God's skill, or God's plan, through his skill to be used for Israel. Great lesson for us to really take to heart. In Exodus 24, we are told that Moses will ascend to the top of Mount Sinai to receive the commandments from the Lord. This is review. We've already studied this. He brings Joshua with him, and they wait for 7 days for the Lord to summon Moses. Moses will meet with the Lord for 40 days, and by all indications, his faithful companion Joshua waited for him. So when he goes up to receive the commandments, Moses brings Joshua. And the two of them, just the two of them, go up. And for 7 days, they sit in Mount Sinai and they wait to be summoned by the Lord. I can't even imagine what they talk about, what they're doing, what's happening, what they're thinking. 7 days, they're seeing the smoke and the rumblings from the mountain. They're hearing the noises that are occurring. They know that the presence of the Lord is right there. That Shekinah glory we talked about, right there on the mountain. And they're waiting. Can you imagine the experience that would be for those two men as they're waiting? And they have no idea how long they're going to wait. But they wait for 7 days, and then Moses alone is called in to meet with the Lord. And Joshua waits. And it appears as though Joshua waits those 40 days because he doesn't know how long Moses is going to be there. And so he waits day after day after day after day after day. He does. Just from a human perspective, I think after day 28, would you be going, is he still alive? Is he eating in there? Is he drinking fluid? What's happening? But he waited faithfully until Moses returns out from there. So that experience alone, can you imagine how that impacted Joshua as he's in training? Just that experience. I'm sorry? Oh, okay, yeah, if there's any smoke out anywhere. Um, boy, I'm struggling today with my... As they journeyed together back to the camp, Moses and Joshua realized that the Israelites had built the golden calf idol and they were worshiping it. Joshua is with Moses when Moses destroys the tablets of the commandments. So, he's been up there, they waited 7 days, then Joshua all by himself waited 40 days. They come down, they're so excited, they're carrying, Moses has the tablets written by the finger of God. So excited to come down and share with the people what the Lord has for them in this covenant that he's making with them. And when they get there, they hear the noise, and as they get closer, they realize that they've made this golden calf. Aaron says it just jumped out of the fire. They made it out of the earrings of the people, and it just jumped out of the fire, and they're worshiping that. And Moses is so angry that he breaks the tablets. Joshua saw that. He knew what it took to get the tablets. He knew what it took, what happened when he destroyed the tablets. So all of this Joshua is taking and thinking on and meditating on and putting into his heart. It's changing who he is. Later in the book of Numbers, we find that Hoshea is one of the 12 men chosen to spy in enemy territory. Okay, these are the 12 that go in. He's from the tribe of Ephraim. Hoshea means salvation. But in chapter 13 of Numbers, we find that Moses will change the name of Hoshea to Joshua. So, Joshua was not his first name. Hoshea was the name he was given at birth. But Moses changes his name to Joshua.
Is that the same Joshua?
This is our Joshua. This is our Joshua. Our Joshua, until he was one of the 12 spies, was known by the name of Hoshea. And then Moses is going to change his name to Joshua. Why? Well, because Hoshea means salvation, just salvation. But Joshua means Yahweh is my salvation. Do you see the change? It's not just about salvation. It's not just about how you can get salvation. It's not just about salvation from anything. It's completely specific to Yahweh is my salvation. And so from the time he leaves to be a spy to comes back, now he is Joshua. Yahweh is my salvation. Joshua and Jesus literally have the same name because it is the root name in Hebrew. So we know the story of Joshua and Caleb are the two faithful spies who return with the good report, and they are rewarded with passage into the promised land. All that's review. We've studied that before. Now, Joshua is going to be chosen by God. Let's look at Deuteronomy 31 and Joshua 1 in your packet. Right? Wait a second here. Before I show you that first page you're going to see is Numbers 13. It shows you when the name of Hoshea was changed to Joshua in your time of study this week. Spend some time and read through that. It's just interesting on how that's done. So that'll be something you can read on your own. So Deuteronomy 31, let's start there. And Lynn, we'll start with you and read a paragraph and we'll just go around.
I'm looking for that page now.
Should be right after where it says Hoshea's name is changed to Joshua.
Okay.
Are you missing yours?
I don't seem to have it. I see that.
Really? Do you think that there's some pages where, some packets where it
Well,
didn't get?
it could be that I'm just not.
Let me look here.
That? There.
You found it?
It was just not there yet.
Not in the right order, okay.
Okay.
All right,
Okay.
so let's look at Deuteronomy 31.
Okay. Then Moses went out and spoke these words to all Israel. I am now 120 years old, and I am no longer able to lead you. The Lord has said to me, you shall not cross the Jordan. The Lord your God himself will cross over ahead of you. He will destroy these nations before you, and you will take possession of their land. Joshua also will cross over ahead of you, as the Lord said, and the Lord will do to them what he did to Sihon and Og, the kings of the Amorites, whom he destroyed along with their land. The Lord will deliver them to you, and you must do to them all that I have commanded you. Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid or terrified because of them, for the Lord your God goes with you. He will never leave you nor forsake you.
Then Moses summoned Joshua and said to him in the presence of all Israel, Be strong and courageous, for you must go with this people into the land that the Lord swore to their ancestors to give to them, and you must divide it among them as their inheritance. The Lord himself goes before you and will be with you. He will never leave you nor forsake you. Do not be afraid, do not be discouraged.
So Moses wrote down this law and gave it to the Levitical priests who carried the ark of the covenant of the Lord to all the elders of Israel. Then Moses commanded them, at the end of every 7 years and a year for canceling debts, during the festivals of tabernacles, when all Israel comes to appear before the Lord your God at the place he will choose, you shall read this law before them in their hearing. Assemble the people, men, women, and children, and the foreigners residing in your towns, so they can listen and learn to fear the Lord your God, and follow carefully all the words of his law, of this law. Their children who do not know this law must hear it and learn to fear the Lord your God as long as you live in the land you are crossing the Jordan to possess.
Now the day of your death is near. Call Joshua and present yourself at the tent of meeting, where I will commission him. So Moses and Joshua came and presented themselves at the tent of meeting.
Then the Lord appeared at the tent in a pillar of cloud, and the cloud stood over the entrance to the tent. And the Lord said to Moses, You are going to rest with your ancestors, and these people will soon prostitute themselves to the foreign gods of the land they are entering. They will forsake me and break the covenant I made with them. And in that day I will become angry with them and forsake them. I will hide my face from them, and they will be destroyed. Many disasters and calamities will come on them, and in that day they will ask, Have not these disasters come on us because our God is not with us? And I will certainly hide my face in that day because of all their wickedness and turning to other gods.
Now write down this song and teach it to the Israelites and have them sing it, so that it may be a witness for me against them. When I have brought them into the land flowing with milk and honey, the land I promised on oath to their ancestors, and when they eat their fill and thrive, they will turn to other gods and worship them, rejecting me and breaking my covenant. And when many disasters and calamities come on them, this song will testify against them, because it will not be forgotten by their descendants. I know what they are disposed to do. Even before I bring them into the land I promised them on oath. So Moses wrote down this song that day and taught it to the Israelites.
The Lord gave this command to Joshua, son of Nun. Excuse me. Be strong and courageous, for you will bring the Israelites into the land I promised them on oath, and I myself will be with you.
After Moses finished writing in a book the words of this law from beginning to end, he gave the command to the Levites who carried the ark of the covenant of the Lord. Take this book of the law and place it beside the ark of the covenant of the Lord your God. There it will remain as a witness against you. For I know how rebellious and stiff-necked you are. If you have been rebellious against the Lord while I'm still alive with you, how much more will you rebel after I die? Assemble before me all the elders of your tribes and all of your officials, so that I can speak these words in their hearing, and call the heavens and the earth to testify against them. For I know that after my death you are sure to become utterly corrupt, and to turn from the way that I've commanded you. In the days to come disaster will fall on you, because You will do evil in the sight of the Lord and arouse his anger by what your hands have made.
And Moses recited the words of this song from beginning to end in the hearing of the whole assembly of Israel. The song is in Deuteronomy 32, if you want to take time this week to look at it, that they had. And so all I can say about this passage is, ouch!
Yeah.
Right? This is really tough. So this 120-year-old man that, like Lynn said, was, had worked for the Lord and had given his life over into this mission and given everything that he had, and even gave up, it appears, his family, and Zipporah, went back to her people and sacrificed much for what it was that he was to do. He knows, as he's preparing for his death, all that we just read. You are utterly corrupt. You are a stiff-necked and rebellious people. I already know that you are going to fail. I already know what's going to happen. I know that you are going to have to be punished. I know that great judgment and calamity is going to fall on you. I know already. But does that stop the promise of God? No, it doesn't, does it? One of the things that I hear sometimes people use as an excuse to not turn their lives over to the Lord is they'll say, you don't know what I've done. I have been a wicked, wicked person. I have lived a life. They may be 40, 50, 60 years old, and they'll say, I have lived a life of wickedness. And I think to myself, have you ever read the Old Testament? Because all you can... Huh? What?
I was just agreeing.
Yeah. If you have read the Old Testament, you will realize that is not a precursor to not obtaining salvation. That God will work through that disobedience. Why? To show himself faithful, so that he receives the glory for what you now are. Because always, 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 God sees you for what you will become. Not for what you are in your weakest moment. Not for what you are when you are totally unable to accomplish anything on your own. That is not how God sees you. God sees you for what you will become. We are going to see that when we study the story of Gideon. This man who was hiding in a wine press so that the Midianites wouldn't come and steal his food. Cowering, not fighting him off, trying to protect his little food. And the angel of the Lord comes to him and he says, oh, you mighty warrior. Because he doesn't see him cowering in the corner, doing what he's doing. He sees him for how God is now going to pluck him out and use him. And he says, you are a mighty warrior. So when we see ourselves that way, we need to encourage one another and to continually encourage ourselves that our God is much mightier than that. He is not going to leave us in the pits of despair. He is going to take us and move ahead with his plans and purposes so that the glory of the Lord will be shown in your life. And that's the reason that it's done. And we can be faithful to that. And as we read through these stories and we see that, I hope if nothing else, you understand the nature of God just a little bit better, in that just because we fail over and over and over does not mean that he stops loving us. Okay? So now let's see what Joshua does. We just ended with Randy, so we'll start back here with Lynn and look at chapter 1 of Joshua.
Yeah, I have, okay, then this.
It would be Joshua chapter
Okay.
1, Joshua installed as leader.
Okay.
And that
Just a minute ago.
Yes.
sounds like Moses was, we talked about the Holy Spirit being, holding things at bay,
Uh-huh.
evil and whatever,
Uh-huh.
to some degree,
Uh-huh.
For the people,
Uh-huh.
too. And once he was removed, they just,
Mm-hmm.
but he was some kind of, whatever that is, stabilizing force, or
Right, as long as he was alive. And we're going to see that as a pattern for the children of Israel when we get into the book of Judges. And when we get into some of our further studies, is when they had a good leader, they seemed to behave. When they had a bad leader or no leader, then they fell into utter corruption. And so a good leader helps,
Well,
right?
they fell into corruption with him, but the consequences were dire.
Yes, yes, absolutely.
They really were corrupt with him.
With who?
With Moses.
Oh yeah, at time
Yeah.
yes, they definitely were, and that was the 40 years of wandering, and you know all the things that came about with him. So yes, absolutely.
And I think Moses was showing his temper too when he threw the tablets down and broke them.
And
Well,
he hit the rock.
Yeah, and hit the rock instead of speaking to it, which is what he was told to do, and so yeah. I mean, you know, we see failing all the way around. But now Joshua's coming in, so let's see what happens with Joshua.
Okay. After the death of Moses, the servant of the Lord said to Joshua, son of Nun, Moses' aide, Moses, my servant, is dead. Now then, you and all these people get ready to cross the Jordan River into the land I am about to give to them, to the Israelites. I will give you every place where you set your foot, as I promised Moses. Your territory will extend from the desert of Lebanon and from the great river, the Euphrates, all the Hittites' country, to the Mediterranean Sea in the west. No one will be able to stand against you all the days of your life. As I was with Moses, so I will be with you. I will never leave you nor forsake you. Be strong and courageous, because you will lead these people to inherit the land I swore to their ancestors to give them. Be strong and very courageous. Be careful to obey all the law my servant Moses gave you. Do not turn from it to the right or to the left, that you may be successful wherever you go. Keep this book of the law always on your lips. Meditate on it day and night, so that you may be careful to do everything written in it. Then you will be prosperous and successful. Have I not commanded you? Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid. Do not be discouraged. For the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go. That's beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
So Joshua ordered the officers of the people, go through the camp and tell the people, get your provisions ready. 3 days from now you will cross the Jordan here to go in and take possession of the land the Lord your God is giving to you for your own.
But to the Reubenites, the Gadites, and the half-tribe of Manasseh,
Mm-hmm.
Joshua said, remember the command that Moses, the servant of the Lord, gave you after he said, the Lord your God will give you rest by giving you this land. Your wives, your children, and your livestock may stay in the land that Moses gave you east of the Jordan. But all your fighting men, ready for battle, must cross over ahead of your fellow Israelites. You are to help them until the Lord gives them rest, as he has done for you, and until they too have taken possession of the land the Lord your God is giving them. After that you may go back and occupy your own land, which Moses, the servant of the Lord, gave you east of the Jordan before the sunrise. Then they answered Joshua, whatever you have commanded us we will do, and wherever you send us we will go. Just as we fully obeyed Moses, so we will obey you. Only may the Lord your God be with you as he was with Moses. Whoever rebels against your word and does not obey it, whatever you may command them, will be put to death. Only be strong and courageous.
Okay, so here is where Joshua is now going to be installed as the leader. The Lord himself speaks to Joshua and tells him that first paragraph. That's why you guys said, oh, it's so beautiful. It's because it's the words of the Lord himself speaking to Joshua. And he says, okay, now that Moses is gone, you're going to cross the Jordan River. You are now going to take possession of the land. And that happens like 3 days after the death of Moses. So there's not any time period. Moses dies, God takes care of the burial, and 3 days later they're ready to go and go across the Jordan into the land. He says, I'm going to give you everywhere. Your territory is going to be all that I promised to Abraham. No one is going to be able to stand against you all the days of your life. And that was true for Joshua. Joshua was a victorious military general, and the people were not able to fight against Joshua, but not because Joshua was strong, but because Joshua's God was strong. And he says, as I was with Moses, I am going to be with you, and I will never, 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 never leave you nor forsake you. So Joshua gets to put that in his head. Joshua, who knows now the nature of the God of Israel, based on what he's gone through with Moses, puts that in his head. He tells him, be strong and courageous. And then the next one, be strong and very courageous. Why would he tell him that?
Because it's going to be tough.
It's not going to be easy, is it? You need to stand fast in what it is. You need to stand in the assurance of who I am as your God, and that I will never leave you and forsake you. That's what he is to be strong in, is that. Not strong in anything else, but strong in the fact that he is to recognize that the Lord, his God, is the one who is always going to be able to fight his battle. He says, always obey the laws that Moses gave you. Don't turn away from it. Meditate. Keep it on your lips and meditate on it day and night. Look how important it was that they were to do that. Remember last week we spent some time and I showed you about the tefillin that you wrap on your hands and the phylacteries that are they wore on there and what that all meant, and the mezuzahs and all of that. It's a representation of Deuteronomy to always be meditating. Here's another one. Meditate on it day and night. Have it always on your lips. Can you imagine the power our churches would unleash if there wasn't a huge number of people who only heard God's word on Sunday morning for 30 minutes? But instead, meditated on it every day. Meditated on it. Listen to it on TV. Listen to it on podcasts. Listen to it on the radio. Read it. Did whatever it was. If this was part of your daily feeding, can you imagine the power that would be unleashed? But instead, what happens is there are an awful lot of people who are satisfied with a 30-minute sermon of some sort from someone, and literally they are starving to death because they're not meditating on the word. They're not growing from it. They are only getting enough sustenance to stay alive. They're not growing from it. So he tells them, everything that I'm telling you to do, meditate on that. It's that example where he says, Joshua's going to say later, he's going to say, the Lord tells us to choose life or to choose death. Okay, that's your choices. Choose life. Why? Because that is the choice. And that's what God continually tells these people, is he says, in the law, I want you to obey my law, because when you obey my law, then my blessings get to pour out, and that is so what I desire for my people. I get to bless you, and then you flourish, and you live in this land, and you grow, and you're successful, and your families will grow, and things will be amazing for you. But if you choose not to obey my law, what's going to happen? It's going to be disastrous. You're going to be expelled from the land that I gave you. Your families are going to be killed by invaders that come in and take it. You're not going to have blessing. Your fields aren't going to grow. Your olives won't grow. Your grapes won't grow. You're going to struggle to find bread. Choose the blessing. Choose the blessing. Same for us today. No different for us today. God says, if you take my hand and walk with me, you will not walk alone. I will never leave or forsake you. I will walk beside you. I will give you a peace that you can get nowhere else. It will, what is the saying, passes all understanding? The peace that we just can't even understand that people could have. I will walk with you every step of the way if you just simply take my hand. But if you choose not to, and you don't want to walk with me, then it's going to be disastrous, because this world is brutal, and it will eat you alive. Choose life. Choose life. So clear what he desires for his people, and it's such an easy decision. But we fail, and they fail. We're going to see how that gets handled. So Joshua's now going to prepare the people to get ready to go on their journey. I love the fact that while God told him, be strong and courageous, look at the very last line there. This is the people. Oh, we'll follow you just the way we followed Moses. Well, that's not so great. That's not so great. But they say, only be strong and courageous, Joshua. They all know that that's what's important. All right, let's go back to our black print direction, and we'll do a little bit more reading. Miraculous events from the book of Joshua. Can you go back to that one? I need to number these pages. I need to start doing that.
I am so lost here.
Okay, I'm sorry. Can you show her, Trudy? Miraculous events from the book of Joshua. I think that part of her pages are still in the 3-ring binder.
There, no, this is under here. I'm sorry to hold everything
No,
up.
don't worry about it. Miraculous events. That's what we're looking for.
On the floor.
Did she find it?
I don't,
Those two.
that's it, right there.
That's
This
all
is
she's
the
got.
old stuff. Aha.
There it is. Good job.
Okay.
Good job. All right. Miraculous events from the book of Joshua. So, the first one. Joshua instructs the Levites and the priests to carry the Ark of the Covenant across the Jordan River to enter into the land of milk and honey. As the soles of the priests' shoes touch the waters, it miraculously parts, just as the parting of the sea had occurred at the Exodus from Egypt. The priests and the Levites carry the ark across the river on dry land. Once they arrive, they are instructed to make a memorial with 12 stones to remind them to tell their children what the Lord had done for them at the Jordan River. So lest you think that the parting of the Red Sea is the only time that happened, the same thing is going to happen here at the Jordan. I included in your packet a little map that is going to show you. You don't have to do it right now if you don't want, but right here it's a little map that shows you when the where the Jordan River is, where they were going to go across. Right up at the top, you'll see they were going to go across, and oh no, yeah, at the very top it says the wilderness journey, but it was at the very top. So they're going to go across the Jordan River and enter into the promised land from there. But the interesting thing is, it's the exact same scenario as the parting of the Red Sea. The souls of the Levites carrying the Ark of the Covenant, as soon as their souls hit the water, God miraculously parts it. It says it stands on end, and they walk across on dry land. Remember, this is a huge number of people, several million, that are going to go across. And the Ark of the Covenant stays in the middle of the river, while all the people march past it. Isn't that just amazing? And so then they take 12 stones out of that dry land area, and they carry it, and they're going to make a memorial out of the 12 stones. Why 12? One for each tribe of the Israelites. And they make the memorial, why? So that the Lord says, so that when your sons say, hey, what is this thing? Why is this memorial here? You can tell them what the Lord did for you when you crossed the Jordan River. So these people who didn't get to see the parting of the sea, they now have their own miraculous event that they get to see. All right, number 2, during the time of great battle, with many countries coming against the Israelites at the same time, God is going to provide a great victory to Joshua and his army. One of the most amazing things that he does for them is to give them additional time to fight. Let me read that to you. On the day the Lord gave the Amorites over to Israel, Joshua said to the Lord in the presence of Israel, Sun, stand still over Gibeon, and you, moon, over the valley of Ahazion. So the sun stood still and the moon stopped, till the nation avenged itself on its enemies, as is written in the book of Jasher. The sun stopped in the middle of the sky and delayed going down about a full day. There has never been a day like it before or since, a day when the Lord listened to a human being. Surely the Lord was fighting for Israel. Then Joshua returned with all Israel to the camp at Gilgal. And you can read that story in its in the fullness in Joshua 10. So this is an amazing event that we only see this one time. The battle's going on. They need some more daylight. Nighttime is going to create quite a problem for them. So the Lord causes the sun to simply stand still. Many scholars have a great deal of difficulty with that one. And they will say it's allegorical. In other words, it represents something else. It's not a literal stopping of the sun. That would create the axis of the sun would have to be, or the axis of the earth would have to be adjusted. There's all the scientific ways that they try and say that that's not it. But we do need to remember this. Who made the sun?
It's God.
Who made the moon? Who made the stars? Who made the earth? If he wants to stop it, it's his to stop. Right, Trudy?
That's right.
It's his to stop. And so I find it hard to believe that they find it hard to believe. Because it is what God does. And so he stops it for them and creates this miraculous event. Again, these are the children who have not seen the plagues, who have not seen many of the miracles that their parents had seen. Look what they're seeing now as their relationship with the Lord is growing. And the third one is probably the most well-known event in the life of Joshua is the Battle of Jericho. Joshua chapters 5 and 6 tell the story. First, Joshua meets the commander of the Lord's army, who tells him, "Take off your shoes, for the ground upon which you stand is holy." Boy, what does that remind you of? The burning bush, right?
Yeah.
So Moses, the same thing told to Moses, and now Joshua is receiving that same experience. The Lord is now going to instruct Joshua that he is ready for the army to go in and take Jericho. The army is going to march around the walls of Jericho for 6 days, and each day they're going to blow the shofar as they march. No voices will be lifted up. On the 7th day, they will blow the shofars again, but this time they will cry out with a loud voice, and the walls of Jericho will collapse so that the army can now enter into the city. Joshua's men were instructed to protect and remove Rahab and her family because she protected the 2 spies that Joshua had sent into the city earlier. They are going to recognize Rahab's house by the scarlet banner hanging from her window. Rahab's going to play a very important part of Jewish history, as she is going to be the great-great-grandmother of King David. So, she is known as the harlot, Rahab. The 2 spies that Joshua sends in there, Rahab hides them, gives them protection so that they can go back and tell Joshua the information he needs. And so she and her family are protected by that. So when the walls collapse and they go in and take all of the people of the city of Jericho, Rahab hangs a scarlet banner out of her window so that they will recognize her. They go and take her and they protect her and they bring her into the community of Israel. Rabbinic teaching teaches that Rahab married the second spy, not Joshua, Caleb, the second one that's not scriptural, but you'll hear that story. It's one of those traditional teachings you hear often enough, pretty soon you just think that's what happened. That is a teaching, but there isn't any scriptural backing. We do know that she comes in to the nation of Israel. We do know that she marries someone in the nation of Israel because she is now going to be in the lineage of King David. A prostitute, a Gentile prostitute who gave her life to the Lord. All right. Now, Joshua's going to divide the land. An important part of the book of Joshua is in chapters 13 through 19. In those 6 chapters, you're going to see the division of the land of Canaan among the 12 tribes. This allotment will continue throughout the history of Israel. And there's a map in your packet where you can look at the division of the tribes. Now, it's really... It would be really good if you familiarize yourself a little bit with the territories. You'll see that they're not divided equally. It's not that the land was taken up and given 12 equal portions. Larger portions for some, smaller portions for some. There is some division of the land in varying degrees. This will remain throughout biblical history. The allotments don't change. So it will stay the same. So sort of familiarize yourself a little bit with it. Now the Levites do not get an allotment of land. Remember, they were told their inheritance is the Lord. And so they get Levitical cities in each one of the tribes. There are places where they can go where there are cities that are maintained for them, but they do not get an allotment of land. This is a critical thing in Israel's history, a very important thing that happens in these 6 chapters. So now, what happens to Joshua? Well, in chapter 24, we read about the death of Joshua. Although he is disappointed